Hello and welcome to Galaxy TV News. My name is Iribami Salako. We begin with headlines. President Tinubu urges all political stakeholders and the electorate to uphold peace and decorum before or after the elections. Plus, on the news, Supreme Court dismisses suit instituted by 16 states of the Federation challenging constitutionality of Act establishing EFCC and two others. From the international, saying 10 people die and others hurt in a fire that broke out at a care home near Zaragoza in northeastern Spain. Details of these and more coming your way soon. Do stay with us. Many thanks for joining us at this time. Now details of the news. As Ondo State prepares for its off-cycle governorship election, President Bola Tinubu urges all political stakeholders and the electorate to uphold peace and decorum and fulfill their civic responsibilities without fear before or after the elections. In a statement released on Friday, the Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, said President Tinubu anticipates a democratic process in the state that will genuinely reflect the people's will and power to freely choose their leaders. Onanuga said that the President commends the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) for its diligent preparations for the election, particularly its timely distribution of sensitive materials across all 18 local government areas in the state. He also acknowledges the deployment of security men to maintain law and order. He appreciates the assurances from the Inspector General of Police and the Chief of Defense Staff that the personnel will act professionally and adhere to the provisions of the Electoral Act to ensure a credible electoral process. And still on the election, officers of the Nigerian Police Force on Friday led officers from other security agencies on a show of force ahead of tomorrow's governorship election in Ondo State. The election is taking place across 18 local government councils of the state, with the deployment of security personnel already made for peaceful conduct of the poll. Correspondent Kolojo reports that the team took off from the force headquarters in Akure and moved round major streets of Akure, the state capital. The team comprised of officers from the Nigerian Police Force, Nigerian Army, State Security Service, Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, Nigeria Customs Service, Immigration, among others. The exercise, according to the Public Relations Officer of the Nigerian Police Force, ACP Muyiwa Adejobi, was to sensitize residents and eligible voters in Ondo State on the need to conduct themselves in peaceful manner before, during and after the exercise. Adejobi emphasized the need for the people to abide strictly with the rules guarding the election and they show compliance with the restriction of movement initiated by the police.
Everything is dynamic. A place that you have analyzed to be free today will be violent tomorrow. So in security business, you don't actually remain constant. We have done our threat analysis, and that's why we have done deployment accordingly. But for now, I don't want to say a place is a flashpoint or a place is not a flashpoint. Like I said, a place that is not a flashpoint today might be a flashpoint tomorrow due to dynamism and dimensions any electoral process can take in this country.
Now, joining us from Akure, the Ondo State capital, we have Professor Chris Kwaja, a board member, Yaga Africa. He will be speaking on issues around Ondo governorship election. Good evening and thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Good evening.
All right, so what's your assessment of the build-up to tomorrow's governorship election in Ondo State?
So far, the political climate is calm. People are going about their normal businesses. Security agencies are on ground. Security personnel are boots on the ground. We went around some of the local governments earlier today. We saw the presence of security personnel, we saw INEC officials, we saw ad hoc staff, all at the respective locations where they are supposed to take custody of sensitive material. And we also issued a statement yesterday regarding some of the concerns in the run-up to the elections. One, issues around the desperation of politicians in the run-up to the elections, which in some ways got the polity heated up, and such a desperation is capable of impacting negatively on the elections. We also drew attention to the fact that money is playing a major role in determining electoral outcome. Voter inducement is a major concern for us in the run-up to the elections. And most importantly is the whole question of voter apathy. We will also experience low voter turnout, though by virtue of what INEC has in its in the voter register, there are over 2 million registered voters in Ondo State, but our projection is that there will be low voter turnout, and this is not unconnected to certain or some issues that are capable of making our citizens behave that way. One is the whole question of citizens believing that their votes don't count. Some citizens are believing that their vote don't count, and the outcome of elections are already predetermined, so they will not go out to vote. And for us as Yaga Africa, our call to citizens is that they should not be complacent in that way. They should come out and vote for the candidates of their choice, because if they don't vote, they've ceded their power to hold leaders accountable at the end of the day. Tomorrow is the D-Day. So whatever they are doing, they should sacrifice for tomorrow to ensure that they participate actively in determining who governs them, in also ensuring that the vote will translate into their ability to engage policy actors with a view to demanding that leaders who emerge through this process are able to meet up the expectations of that the expectations based on the promises that they've made to the citizens.
Okay, all right. So when you talked about voter apathy, will you say that security concerns might also be responsible for this? And would you say security deployment too would be adequate following spate of violence and intimidation already being recorded ahead of the poll?
So far, the security agencies have promised that they remain professional, that they have adequate boots on the ground to provide the much needed security that citizens need. That's on one hand, but generally based on our own assessment and movement so far, the state is calm. There are no specific manifest examples of violence that will stop citizens from going out to vote.
Okay, all right. So what are your expectations for the election tomorrow, given what you've explained that you've seen so far? What do you think might be how things would go tomorrow? For Yaga Africa, there are three critical tests that this election will provide. The first is the test of the integrity of INEC to deliver on credible elections. The second is the integrity test on the part of security agencies to be professional in dealing with this issue. Election is a civil matter. Security agencies should be as civil as possible. The third is the resilience test for citizens themselves to be able
to withstand any attempt by persons or group of persons to undermine the integrity of the elections. They should stand and fight for their vote to ensure that their vote counts. Now, that's our expectation. If these three tests I just mentioned at the end of the day are recorded positively, then we will say election was credible, election was free and fair, election was violence free.
Thank you. All right. We thank you so much for sharing your views with us on Galaxy TV News at this time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's Professor Chris Kwaja, board member, Yaga Africa. Now, moving on to other stories. The Nigerian Civil Defense Corps have declared readiness to fully get involved in the provision of security for the gubernatorial election. Speaking at a press briefing, the Deputy Commandant General Operations Philip Sayuba said that NSCDC will be deploying 6,200 personnel for the election. DCG Ayuba said the Corps have the mandate to monitor activities at polling stations during the voting exercise. He warned any potential troublemaker to desist from causing mayhem.
Do you understand what I mean? You can start, I mean, that can be used to cause problems. You know? Because before you know it, some people have been mischievous and start video recording, you know, what's happening there. Are you getting my point? I'm addressing you because you are the one that asked the question.
Away from election now to other stories, the Supreme Court on Friday dismissed the suit instituted by 16 states of the Federation against the Attorney General of the Federation, challenging the constitutionality of the act establishing the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and two others. The plaintiffs had argued that the Supreme Court, in Dr. Joseph Nkobike versus Federal Republic of Nigeria suit, had held that it was a convention against corruption that was reduced into the EFCC Establishment Act, and that in enacting this law in 2004, the provision of Section 12 of the 1999 Constitution, as amended, was not followed. They argued that in bringing a convention into the Nigerian law, the provision of Section 12 must be complied with. According to them, the provision of the Constitution necessitated the majority of the state houses of assembly agreeing to bring the convention in before passing the EFCC Act and others, which was allegedly never done. While delivering judgment on Friday, Justice Uwani Abba Aji, who led a 7-member panel of justices, held that the EFCC Act, which is not a treaty but a convention, does not need the ratification of the House of Assembly. The Supreme Court dismissed the suit in its entirety and resolved the case against the plaintiffs. The court ruled that the NFIU guideline did not contravene the provision of the Constitution to manage the funds of the states and resolve the issue against the plaintiffs. All other judges agreed with the lead judge, saying all the issues raised in the state suit had no merit and are accordingly dismissed. You're still on to the news on Galaxy TV. Let's go on a break. When we come back, the news continues. Just stay with us. We are glad to have you back. Now, for more updates and latest news, please visit our website www.galaxytvonline.com. Connect with us on our X handle at Galaxy TV. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Galaxy TV News. You can follow and interact with us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Galaxy TV. Remember to follow and tag us on our Instagram page at Galaxy TV. Our social media platforms are user-friendly and can always accommodate your live updates and comments, as you can easily scan our IG QR code. The House of Representatives Committee on Finance has pledged to support the Ministry of Finance Incorporated (MOFI) to fully establish itself to recover federal government assets and investment. During an oversight visit to MOFI's headquarters in Abuja, the committee's chairman, Honorable James Falike, commended management team led by Dr. Armstrong Takang for making significant progress. He praised former President Muhammadu Buhari for reviving MOFI, which had been dormant since its establishment in 1959. Falike assured the committee's full support, noting MOFI's critical role in managing and optimizing government assets. Dr. Takang explained that MOFI was previously a passive entity under the Office of the Accountant General under Buhari's administration. It was restructured into an active management entity, modeled after Singapore's 1974 reforms. This restructuring emphasized managing government investment and assets to boost economic contributions. The restructured governance includes a governing council chaired by the president, a board of directors led by Dr. Shamsuddin Usman, and an executive management team.
Can they spend money without justification? Do they spend money without approval? Can their policies be different from all others? Can the Singapore or which other country or Brazil have staff morale low, or they have differential in staff in the way we treat our staff?
3 areas that we've been charged with. One is to list the various assets that federal government owns across the different asset classes, so at least we can establish and know what government owns. Today you can tell how much government owes, but before now it is difficult to say what government owns across the various asset classes. So the first thing that we've been charged with is to work towards creating that assets register so that there's visibility as to what government owns.
The special service of songs was held in Abuja for the late Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Taoreed Abiodun Lagbaja. Speaking at the occasion, the Commander of Training and Doctrine Command, Major General Kelvin Aligbe, praised the late Chief of Army Staff, General Lagbaja, as an extraordinary military leader. He noted that it was no surprise Lagbaja was the only officer to command the battalion twice. Major General Aligbe, speaking on behalf of the 39th regular course at the Service of Song ceremony, reflected on their shared journey and recalled their commissioning as part of the 39th regular course on September 12, 1987, when 199 officer cadets began their training to join the armed forces. He pointed out that from the beginning, Lagbaja stood out as a born leader. He urged the military community to embody the values of service and dedication that Lagbaja held there. Speaking on behalf of the Nigerian Army Officers' Wives Association, Bilikisu Ibrahim described Lagbaja as a man of faith whose spirit was rooted in devotion and conviction. The global president of St. Charles Old Boys Association, Tadi Adekunle, who read a poem written by senior secondary school 2 students of the school, described Lagbaja as an immortal hero.
Sincere commiseration to the distinguished audience here gathered this morning in continuation of the series of activities lined up to honor the life and times of our late Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Taoreed Abiodun Lagbaja, the 23rd Chief of Army Staff of the Nigerian Army.
And now joining us to speak on Ondo State governorship election coming up tomorrow, we have Dr. Kehinde Tiger, who is joining us from Warri, Delta State. Good evening and thank you so much for joining us at this time. Okay, or if you can hear me, what's your assessment so far with how things are going in Ondo State for preparation for tomorrow's election? Okay, It seems it's not with us at this time. Now, moving on with other stories, the Federal Ministry of Education has joined the nation in observing Armed Forces Remembrance Day in line with President Bola Tinubu's initiative to honor Nigeria's servicemen and fallen heroes. The ceremony held at the ministry's headquarters was attended by key dignitaries, including Honorable Minister Dr. Maruf Tunji Alausa, Minister of State Dr. Shuaibu Said Ahmed, and Permanent Secretary Dr. Nasir Sani Guarizo. Correspondent Kaleojo reports that Dr. Alausa reaffirmed the ministry's dedication to honoring veterans and servicemen who have protected Nigeria's unity. He emphasized the renewed significance of Armed Forces Remembrance Day under President Tinubu's leadership, calling on all government bodies to support this cause. On her part, the Minister of State for Education, Dr. Shuaibu Ahmed, assured that all agencies under the Federal Ministry of Education will join in this celebration, urging all personnel to wear the emblem from now until the culmination of the official ceremony on January 15th. In his opening remarks, Dr. Nasir Sani Guarizo, the Permanent Secretary, highlighted the ministry's commitment to supporting Armed Forces Remembrance Day activities, beginning with the event on Friday and continuing until January 15th.
President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has done his own bit by launching it, and we're supporting the President today in recognizing these fallen heroes and supporting them and letting them know, though they're gone, that we value their contribution. They sacrificed their lives for us.
Now, we move to the international desk for more news. This is news from the international scene. At least 10 people have been killed in a desert in a fire that broke out at a care home near Zaragoza in northeastern Spain, emergency services say. The fire broke out in the town of Vilafranca de Ebro early on Friday morning, and local officials said 82 people were living in the home at the time. The center opened 16 years ago as a retirement home, according to local reports, but has since specialized in care for residents with dementia and mental health problems. Emergency services were alerted at about 5 a.m. on Friday, and firefighters were able to put out the fire. The ages of those who died are not yet known. 2 other people were taken to hospital, including one person whose condition was described as critical. The mayor of Vilafranca de Ebro told Spanish radio. Vulgar Ramirez told Cadena Ser that the tragedy may have been caused by mattress on fire in one of the rooms. Witnesses said there was little fire damage to the single-story building, and smoke inhalation is being blamed for the large number of fatalities. And that's it for now, but do join us at 9 p.m. for our prime time news. My name is Iribami Salako. See you then.